Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the More page and getting a little bit more out of our Sunday messages. It's been a great 3 weeks going through our new series Yield, where we've been talking about the principle of the Sabbath. And really, we have summarized that principle in 3 words that we hope you can take away and remember from this series. Those 3 words are stop, rest, and repeat. And really the whole point of the series and the whole principle of the Sabbath is that we need to stop our work, rest in Jesus, and repeat it in the rhythms of our life. And that's really what the last message focused on this past Sunday, is how do we repeat the principle of the Sabbath throughout the rhythms of our life. And we saw that there are moments in our days that we need to learn to Sabbath. There are days in our week that we need to set aside for Sabbath. And then there's even seasons of our life that we need to be concerned with the Sabbath. And we use 2 words that you may have never heard before, maybe because we made them up, at the end of the message, where we talked about there's seasons in our life that are under Sabbath. There are seasons when we're just busy and life gets crazy, and sometimes that's well beyond your control. And I think we need to recognize that as a season, but don't settle into that as a routine. Don't let that become just the new normal of your life. Fight to regain that balance, that rhythm of yielding inside your life. But there's also seasons where we are over Sabbath. And if we're honest, those do happen, where it can just get really easy to stay comfortable and not push ahead, not be productive, not grow. And I think that we need to recognize that as a possibility and make sure that we don't take the Sabbath principle too far. We pointed out Sunday that the Sabbath principle is a day of rest, but it's only 1 out of 7. We also have 6 days to work. So we need to make sure that we don't take it so far that it becomes laziness. I think Paul has a good word for us to look at tonight. Maybe you take some time and talk about or even think about if you're by yourself. And that's found in Ephesians chapter 5. So if you need to, go ahead and pause this. Go grab your Bible. Look at this. Look at what Paul writes in Ephesians 5, 15, 16, and 17. This is what Paul says. He says, "Pay careful attention then to how you live, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of the time because the days are evil. So don't be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." And so I love what he says to us there, that we are to pay careful attention to how we live. Discern what season of life you're in. Are you under Sabbath? Are you over Sabbath? Are you in a place where you've really found a good balance? And he says, do this because that's what wise people do. Wise people are self-aware. They pay attention to how they're living, what their life looks like, what season of life they're in. And then he says that we do that so that we can make the most of the time. See, the fact is, you and I are given a set amount of time on this earth by God. You don't know how long it is, I don't know how long it is, but we have amount of time, and it is not an infinite amount. It is fixed, it is finite, and we need to make sure we're getting the most out of that time. However, that doesn't mean that we try to squeeze as much out of every possible minute by doing. Matter of fact, I think that we make the most out of our time by Sabbathing, by taking that day to set aside to God and reflect on the good things He's done in our lives and the good things that He's given us to enjoy in our lives. And I think that by Sabbathing, we learn to make the most of our lives. When we don't do that enough, life goes by in a blur and we don't get the enjoyment, the pleasure, the memories out of it that we should. And when we over Sabbath, we're just not making the most of our time because we're point blank being lazy. And so I think that the way we make the most of our time is by finding that balance. And I love what he says there in verse 17. He says, "So don't be foolish. Understand what the Lord's will is." I believe that it's very simple out of the series that God's will is for you to learn how to apply the principle of Sabbath into your life. Moments in your day, days in your week, seasons in your life. So maybe you'll take some time tonight, think about that. We're going to leave some questions for you below to get into, dig into. If you're in a group setting, talk about those things. Be open, be transparent, and let's figure out what it looks like, not generally, but specifically, for us to build these rhythms in our life so that we can stop, rest, and begin to repeat.